Good morning. Lashi Lawrence McElroy here with a first in our Monday at 10 a.m. Facebook Live sessions for our folks from our program at Sachem Public Library. Today, we're going to start a little warm-up, a little stretch, and spend some time with our rails floor exercise. So let's get started. I'm going to take off my glasses now. I only need them to make sure that I hit the right button at the right time. I'm going to back up. So our stretch this morning is going to be come out of our public class set for we call group 6, which is basic stretching. So we're going to do a wide leg hamstring stretch. But before we do a hamstring stretch, we want to get a little blood, a little oxygen going to the muscles of the lower body and the glutes and that sort of thing. So get started. Let me get my stopwatch, because we're going to do marching a couple of different ways for 20 seconds. But let's just start with a shake. Just sort of let everything go. Loosen up, relax, shake stuff out. The sillier you feel, probably the closer you are to doing what it is that I want you to do. Now we're going to march 2 ways. You want to make targets with your hands. This will be a little bit weird because I have a stopwatch in one hand. We're going to march 20 seconds with the knees up and then the knees wide. If you can do the wide knees, if you can't, what you want to do is choose a height of target that you can meet. So if you have smaller range of motion, doesn't say anything good or anything bad about you, it's just you, so the hands go down a little bit lower. You have a larger range of motion, a little bit higher, but bring the knees to the hands, not the hands to the knees. And there's our 20 seconds. We're going to open up the legs to the wider position, sort of changes where the emphasis of the warmth goes. Keep breathing, don't hold your breath. About 7 seconds left in the second march. And go ahead. Just little ballistic bounces back and forth between the 2 feet. Might as well shake out the arms a little bit as you're doing that. I'm going to put the stopwatch back. All right. In our wide leg or wide feet hamstring stretch, you want to be careful here. I have some tools with me. I have handy dandy yoga block. I have a substitute for that, a chair. Now, I want you to keep in mind a couple of things here. One, if your doctor or medical provider has told you don't drop your chest or your head below your hips or something like that, or don't bend, just do something else while we're doing the hamstring stretch, or if you can, do a partial hamstring stretch, but just not bend all the way. That's okay too. Chairs here for support. Yoga blocks here for support. Show you how to use a yoga block. If you're in a wide leg hamstring stretch, you don't have a great big range of motion, you put your hand on the height of the yoga block. As you start to open up a little bit, you might move it down. Third position, flat. And then finally, that gets you to a place probably where you can use your fingertips. Remember, the purpose of the hamstring stretch is to stretch the hamstrings, not to reach the floor. So, substitute for the yoga block, complete works of Shakespeare. I think every house should have a complete works of Shakespeare. A little bit different than the block. It's not solid, so you have to make sure that you can hold the book closed. But you have the same 3 positions. Holding up here, holding on the leaf side of the book, not the binder side. There's the second position. Third is flat, just like the yoga block. And that gets you to the same position where you might use your fingers. For a little bit higher, you have a chair. So I'm going to do a sideways view here. You can have the hands on the chair. If you have a stability ball, you don't want to use that. That can roll out from underneath of you. So you want something solid that you can use. You can also use your legs for support. So I want you to breathe. I want you to relax. I want you to choose a decent width. I'm going to face away from you, so my voice will still be going toward the camera and the microphone. You may want to face away from your screen so you can see what I'm doing. So feet are parallel, wide. Even here, I'm starting to pay attention to and be mindful of lengthening the legs. It's almost like my feet are grounded to the floor. The legs are the ropes that are holding the balloon that is my upper torso down to the earth. So the balloon's trying to rise, lengthening the legs. And for some people, this is enough of a stretch. You don't even have to bend. Otherwise, lifting up out of the hips, straightening the spine as well, and beginning that forward fold. As you start to feel yourself get by your halfway point, let the spine collapse. And there you go. Just hanging, hands in a support hand position on legs, fingertips. Hands have their different variations as well. Fingertips, highest position. Pads of the fingers get you a little bit closer to the ground. Knuckles a little bit closer. Palms to the ground. And then you can start to separate the hands. Feel, see how that feels. Feel how that looks. Something like that. And just let the head hang. Unless you have some issues with your neck, you may have to keep the neck active so the head doesn't just simply drop. So be careful with that. I'll be down here for a little while. So if you start to get to your time limitation, go ahead and start to come up out of it. Bend the knees a little bit and roll up, maybe walking the hands up the front of the body. I'm going to be here for a couple more breaths. Breathing, hanging, and just being here. One more breath. Bend the knees a little bit from where they are. Start to roll up out of it. Again, this would be the walking the hands up the front of the body aspect. Otherwise, let their arms dangle. And continue to roll up out of it. One vertebra at a time as much as possible. And finally, the cervical and the neck stack one on top of the other. And there's our little warm-up. So we have our primary floor exercise, a fundamental we refer to as playing the scales, called walking the rails. You can see I've laid out a couple of lines of tape at my shoulder width. Remember, our shoulder width, the Water Tiger School, is defined by where the drop of the shoulder is, should split the heel in that side in half. Same is true on the other side. So feet are at shoulder width. Now, if I were to take our vertical alignment out of this, walking the rails, for those who don't know or need a reminder, is this. I want my feet to stay parallel, or as close to parallel as possible, and at shoulder width. We are fundamentally working on four things here. The spine hanging like a string of pearls, crown point of the head over the base of the pelvic bowl. And as we walk the rails, that's shifting from one foot over to the other foot, crown point of the head, base of the pelvic bowl, ball of the foot. And as we're doing that, we want to keep the spine hanging like a string of pearls, right? It should be relaxed in movement. I want to be able to maintain my shoulder width also in movement. And I want to maintain my awareness of the feet in their relationship to the floor. In other words, I want to know where they are, that they're pointed forward, that the feet are parallel, and that when I step, because I'm stepping more to the side, that I'm not turning the foot out. And the fourth thing, I want to govern the step. I want to have enough awareness and mindfulness of the step that I'm not collapsing into it. I'm not falling. There's no sense of thud. So those are the four basics in the movement. And that's where we want to start, because we're going to dress this up and sort of take it out to dinner a little bit and use it to begin to explore how our movement should be continuous and to be like a child on the swing. So when we walk the rails in the first exercise, in the primary exercise that we do more widely than some of the added movements, we have 5 choices for our hands. We can hold them over our belly, on our belly, not really over our belly. They should be in contact, cupped one over the other, not with fingers interlocked. And on the center line, a little bit closer to the pubic bone than the solar plexus, there's an acupuncture point for the lower field of elixir, the Shia Dantian. And that's where we want our hands to be, more or less where your elbow bends And where your hand can come into contact then with your center line at that first primary point, and it's relatively comfortable, that's about where that point is. Now, some will say that there's a specificity for the hand position, depending upon who you are. Our opinion in Water Tiger School is whichever hand feels like it belongs next to the body is for you, the one that belongs there. You can also do a sort of pseudo version of that behind the back. Both palms out, you create a little hook with one hand, set the other one in. If you like dangly arms, that's okay. We just want an activation of the palms so they're downward. Don't have to be parallel. That's tweaky on folks' wrists. We might be doing some wrist stretches moving forward in this series. Or lightly closed fists, wrists forward, not up, not in. See what happens when I go in? The arms just die. Forward is the activation that we want. Now, when I do that, my structure, bone and muscle, pull my hands out away from my body. I'm not making that happen. I'm not doing that. That's my body moving my hands out. And the last position is the position that I usually use when I'm teaching. That's my hands on my hips. So that way you can see what my hips are doing. That when I slide from side to side, it's a slide. I'm not tilting one hip or the other hip. So I'll take a short little pass with walking the rails, just to get that fundamental idea of the rails out of the way. So we settle the weight into one foot, reach out to our shoulder width, set the heel on the ground. It's referred to as a feather step, and then settle the weight into that foot. Back to the other side. And eventually, this should sort of start to become to feel like a slinky going down the stairs. There's really no stop. The root is continuous down into the earth, rolling down into one leg, and then bouncing back up and rolling down into the other leg. So even though we're going to 100% of the weight on one foot and then to the other, there's a sensation of movement. I'm going to take one more step. I'm going to do a little casual close. So I'll show you what that looks like here in a moment. But casual close just gives us an idea, a feeling, a sense that passes over. It's time for something else now. And when we balance the steps, we started with a step I started with my step with my left foot. So I wanted to finish with a step to the right foot. The hands release from where they are. They float up, out, away from the body as if on top of a beach ball filled with helium. The back foot comes in. You press down, redivide the weight equally between the 2 feet. And then a little settling pulls the hands over that acupuncture point on the belly. So that's your casual close. So what we're going to add to that is a little upper body exercise called a ball rotation. We want a ball. It's about the size of our torso. One hand at top, other hand at bottom. And that position is on the center line. The ball is very real from top to bottom. You can feel it. This is part of this exercise, right? But notice the ball isn't real front to back, because if it was, I'd have to hold it out here. And that's too much activation, but right there. And what we refer to as a single rotation is the hands changing positions, but they're turning as like the hands would turn if you were turning a valve or a steering wheel. They remain the same distance here that they are here. So part of this exercise is to maintain the reality of the ball. And what that does for us, it begins to set us on a pathway of building our imagination skills to really be able to create the shadow opponent as we do our Tai Chi postures and our Tai Chi form. So the more real you can make this ball, the better off you are. Now, some people have a lot of issues. They have a magic ball that tends to grow as you turn it to the side, or for some people, shrink as you grow it to the side. So what you might want to do is use a tool. Now, I have two tools here. Neither of them are really the right size for me. One is a Tai Chi rule, a gift from a student one time, and it's a little short for me. But if you want some practice of what it feels like to maintain that same distance, you find a dowel, a short broomstick, something like that, that you can use to rotate and hold your hands at the same distance. My other tool is a little extrema stick, but even though it's a little extrema stick, it's a little bit big for me. Now notice as I'm doing this, I'm also shifting the weight from foot to foot. And that's what we want to do as we walk. So I'm going to lose the tools. Whichever hand is at the top of the ball, that's the foot that has the weight. So for me, my right hand's the top of the ball, that means my right foot has the weight. So I step to the left hand moves to the top, and the right hand moves to the bottom, and vice versa. And notice that top of the ball moment comes when all of my weight is on that foot. Right foot has all the weight, right hand's the top of the ball. Left foot has all the weight, left hand's the top of the ball. And I'm only going to take one more step as I go off camera. And my little casual close. So that's walking the rails with one rotation. And I mentioned that we would also use this as a pathway to the child on the swing. Child on the swing is a young family tradition that describes that movement that never stops. You know, if a child's on a swing, as they reach the apex of the swing forward, part of them has already started falling back as the rest of them continue in the same direction they were going. So there's that moment that looks like there's a stop, but it's really not, because they're falling back while still moving forward. And the same is true in the reverse. As they're falling forward, the top part of their body, their feet are swinging back, and you have that moment of hesitation that looks like a stop. And there's not really a hesitation either. They're still swinging at the same pace, but there's that moment that looks like a hesitation or a stop. That's a better way of phrasing it. And we want to use rails with the rotation to sort of explore that particular principle. So in other words, as I start to walk, I don't want to just go and stop and stop and stop. And I'm dressing up the stop a little bit, right? We want to take that slinky-like feeling that we were talking about in just the regular rails, where the weight is rolling from one foot into the other, and bring it into the movement of the upper body. So even as I get to that top hand at the top of the ball, hand at the bottom of the ball, there's a little bit of going over that point that makes it look like a hesitation. So there's not really a stop. You have that almost extension of the rotation, so the movement stays alive as you're walking the rails, and maintaining the quality of the four main points, which are, again, the spine should hang like a string of pearls in movement. I should be able to maintain my shoulder width in movement. I should be able to maintain governance of the step, so I'm not falling into the step. There's no thud in the lower body. And also maintaining awareness of my feet and their relationship to the floor, so I can keep the feet parallel. As we move into more complicated movements in our Tai Chi play, it's very important to have sort of a second nature awareness of the feet and their relationship to the floor. Otherwise, the toes can be in the wrong place, which puts the knees in the wrong place, which means once the COVID-19 crisis is over, you might be getting a consultation from St. Charles Orthopedics. Tai Chi done properly, wonderful for the health of your knees. Can actually reverse some basic knee damage. Sorry about that. I could have sworn I put that on Don't Disturb. And it is on Don't Disturb. I don't understand. Okay, so anywho, we have one rotation and the continuous movement. You can increase the number of rotations for a single step. So formally on the mat, we go to 3 rotations. 2 rotations looks like this. Within a single step, I rotate once at the beginning of the step and twice at the end of the step. Once at the beginning of the step and the second time at the end of the step. 1 and 2. So now my upper body is moving a little bit quicker than my lower body, yet everything is still arriving at the same time. It's another way of exploring how different parts of the body may have to move different distances at different paces, but still everything arrives at the same time, so there isn't an arrival that you move through that point. So that was 2 rotations. 3 rotations is as you start the step is 1, as the foot comes into contact is 2, and as you fill the foot is 3. 1, 2, 3, and still maintaining 1, 2. The reality of the ball, the spine hanging like a string of pearls, and 3. The feet in their relationship to the floor, parallel. Governance of the step, and shoulder width in movement. So you can go for more than that. I would suggest starting with 1, see how that goes. Then add the second one if you get comfortable with that, and then add the third. But don't lose all the points. Make sure each step of the way, pun intended, you get a level of comfort. You take ownership in what it is that you're doing before you attempt the second. But this foundational exercise becomes richer and richer the more that you do it. Because the more that you do it, just the basic rails, even stripping away the upper body movement, the more you can start to feel, the more you become aware of the movement. When we first started with rails, I was talking about that feeling of the slinky going down the stairs, the spring expanding, rolling into the other leg, and then bouncing up and going into the other leg. Well, as you're doing that, you can start to feel the feet, the relationship to the ankle, how that changes, how the ankle into the shin and the calf, into the knee, into the thigh, and the hamstrings, into the glutes, into the abdominals, up into the body. And even without this movement, where it sort of becomes then, you're both puppet and puppeteer, where it feels like the hand that's raising is stepping the foot, the hand that's emptying is emptying the foot, and vice versa. You can even feel with the hands on the belly or the hips how each step changes the relationship between the hand and the body. As you let the arms hang with the palms down, you don't want to be tense, so you'll feel little micro changes and sometimes a little bit macro changes in the way the arms are dangling and moving with the body. You want to start to build that awareness of how each and every step contributes to movement through the rest of the body. I always remember a point in B.K. Lauren's, now the title of the book just went away. I apologize. I'll post it in the comments once I end the session. Flow Like a River, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, B.K. Lauren wrote early on in the book that it was early on in her process with the Chinese martial arts that she felt that she couldn't move a foot without feeling it in her hand. And that's not quite the quote. I'll also post the direct quote. But that's the pathway. That's where we want to go, to be able to feel each and every movement and how it impacts throughout the rest of the body. I'm going to move back up to the screen because that's it for today. Now remember, in the interim, as we are sheltering at home, I'm going to continue these little sessions on Monday morning, starting at 10 a.m. for our Sachem folk. And I'm going to do a second session every week at 10:15 a.m. on Tuesdays for our folk from West Babylon Public Library, which is also an ongoing class and which has also been suspended due to the current crisis. So be looking for them. They will be different for every episode, if you will, with some things carrying over. For instance, for Sachem, at least for the time being, we'll continue with the wide feet or wide leg hamstring stretch for our warm-up. And we'll be doing a lower body stretch with chair assist for the West Babylon group on Tuesdays. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you on the other side.